Hello, Runnels Christian Church and friends. I am Pastor Katie Russell Hainline, and this is a meditation for Sunday, May 24th, 2020. The scripture reading of the day is from the Ten Commandments passage in the book of Exodus. This is chapter 20, verses 8 through 10, the third commandment. Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy. For 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work. You, your son or your daughter, your male or female slave, your livestock, or the alien resident in your towns. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that is in them, but rested on the seventh day. Therefore, the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and consecrated it. Have you ever noticed how busy we all are? We live in a culture that values busyness. We go to work, then we rush to our kids' activities or to a church meeting. Many of us work more than 40 hours a week, or we work 40 hours a week at our main job and then pick up a side hustle or two. Very few of us take all of the vacation days we earn throughout the year. We wear our busyness like a badge of honor. How are you doing? Someone asks. Oh, staying busy, we reply. Just this week, I was thinking of one of my colleagues, someone who pastors a church and raises a family and still seems to manage to read every single book written about the Bible or religion in the last year, and I admired him. How does he do that? But I also kind of envied him. I wish I could do as much as he does. Our societal busyness has really come to light during the coronavirus outbreak when many of us were forced to stay home, forced to slow down, and forced to drop some of our normal activities. We couldn't do it. Immediately, I started seeing people writing about how to make your quarantine productive. If you're going to stay home for a month, you better come out with washboard abs and every single closet in your home cleaned out. Within a week or two, we were longing to go back to normal, to our busy lives. We don't know how to rest. And that's a problem, because rest is one of the big commandments. It's one we don't like to think about a lot. Don't murder, don't steal. We've got a handle on those, but honor the Sabbath day and keep it holy? Not so much. When God gives Moses the 10 Commandments in the book of Exodus, God makes it very clear that the reason we are supposed to observe the Sabbath, to rest and not work one day each week, is because even God rested. In the creation story, God created the heaven and the earth, the sea, and all that is in them in 6 days, and then God rested. I mentioned last week I've been reading this book, An Altar in the World by Barbara Brown Taylor. In it, she observes that in the creation story, God makes everything, light and darkness, heaven and earth, birds of the air, creatures of the sea, and humans, and calls all of them good. But when God rests on the seventh day, God calls that day holy. Everything in creation is good, but rest is holy. A problem that we struggle with is that we've tied busyness up in goodness. We think we're only worth what we do or what we produce. We think we're only good if we're staying busy. But our goodness has absolutely nothing to do with what we do and everything to do with the fact that we were created by God. God made us and called us good. Then God told us to rest and make that holy. Barbara Brown Taylor's book says Sabbath is about the practice of saying no. We have to learn to say no to busyness, to say no to the idea that our worth is tied up in what we do. And that's hard because that's not what our culture demands. But if we start to say no, we start to change our culture. The passage we read from Exodus, an excerpt from the Ten Commandments, instructs Israel to observe the Sabbath not just for themselves, but for their children, their slaves, their livestock, and the immigrant living in their midst. The Sabbath wasn't just to give one person a break, but the whole community. It was an invitation for everyone to find life-giving rest and renewal. When I was installed as the pastor at Runnels Christian Church, one of the things our former regional minister, Bill Spangler-Dunning, made me promise our congregation was that I would take vacation, because a pastor should model for her church and set a good precedent for the next pastor that rest is necessary to good ministry. Rest should be taken. When the forefathers and foremothers of Runnels Christian Church wrote our bylaws, they set term limits for all of the church leadership positions because they knew that rest was good, not just for the individual, but for the whole community. When one person steps aside for a year or two, it invites another person into the work of the church. It invites new ideas and creativity. The church grows and flourishes when we choose to rest. When parents decide that there will be one night a week when everyone is home and the family can share a meal and watch a movie together, they teach their children that it's okay to pause in life. When bosses decide to work 8 hours a day and then go home, they signal to their employees that it's okay for them to do the same. Sabbath keeping, saying no to busy, it's not just for us. It's for everyone. So rather than rushing back to normal, I invite you to use this time of quarantine as Sabbath rest and reflect on where you might need to say no in your life. Maybe in this time you found you don't really miss a particular commitment and you could say no to coming back to it because it's not life-giving to you anymore. Maybe you have found you like having dinner at home every night with your family, and so you want to say no to scheduling activities every single day of the week. Maybe you feel you've given all you have to something and it's time to say no to it so you can say yes to something else. Or maybe you've spent all of quarantine keeping busy and needed to say no to a lot of things so you can finally find a way to really rest. Because you are more than what you do. You are way more than busy. You are a creation of God. That alone means you are good. Barbara Brown Taylor says, even if you spent a whole day being good for nothing, you would still be precious in God's sight. We are commanded to observe the Sabbath, to honor what God calls good, ourselves, our neighbors, and all of creation. And when we really learn to rest in that truth, we are good. God calls that holy. Amen.